it for some unspecified emergency when having a clean handkerchief would save him from embarrassment. Then he kissed Charlotte and went into the garden. Jim Bogard, the new gardener he had hired at the beginning of the season, and his crew had been at work all week. He noted once more, with satisfaction, that dead leaves and broken branches had been raked even from the mulched flower beds around the house and the more inaccessible spaces beneath the azalea and rhododendron bushes. The wilted yellow tops of Mary's lilies had been cut so close to the ground that one couldn't suspect the presence of the bulbs underneath. The Montauk daisies looked like topiary porcupines. The hedges of honeysuckle that enclosed the property on three sides, leaving it open only to the saltwater pond that lay beyond a stretch of fields beginning to turn light green with winter rye in this mild weather, had a prim and angular look. If his neighbor Foster decided to subdivide, or a developer finally got to him, it would not be difficult to plant out whatever monstrosities they might build. At worst, they could put up 2 or 3 houses. Of course, the feeling of open space and the view would be lost. This was a subject of worry for him each year when the potatoes had been taken in and farmers had time to turn their minds to money and taxes. He had been thinking of it during his last visit to the tree nursery and noted the great number of mature bushes for sale and their prices, which weren't so high as he had expected. Should he take the initiative and talk to Foster about his plans? Mary had never wanted to tie up such a large part of her own money in the Bridgehampton property, and she didn't want him to use his money. But Charlotte, really Charlotte and John, he would have to accustom himself to that formulation, might see the problem differently. One never regretted a purchase of land made to protect one's property. He walked around the house and the garage, examining them closely. Here and there Bogard's chattering Ecuadorians had missed an apple. He picked up as many as he saw, threw them on the compost heap, and inspected one by one the garage, the pool, which was under a new cover he didn't like, and the pool house, really a strangely minuscule barn they had been able to convert into a cottage and finish just before the thunderbolt of Mary's illness struck. It had been her project. Schmidt preferred to have Charlotte and her guests in the house under the same roof as he, which wasn't awkward since Mary required these young men to use the bedroom and bathroom with the shower stall off the kitchen, so that to see Charlotte at breakfast required no prearrangement. He could linger quite naturally with his newspaper at the kitchen table or in the wicker rocking chair and listen while she talked on the telephone or with the visiting friend, absorbing the texture of the day she planned. Once the upstairs bedrooms in the pool house, with their town and country bathrooms and the red-tiled kitchen next to the changing rooms, had been completed, the mornings became awkward for Schmidt. In theory, John Riker still occupied these new quarters alone, or with guests he and Charlotte had invited, but Charlotte would make breakfast there, and something inside Schmidt recoiled from the idea of simply walking in and sitting down with him. Mary had done it quite naturally and laughed at his formality, but he detested surprising others as much as being surprised himself. In his opinion, the whole point of giving the young people a separate house was to ensure their privacy. He was not to go there unless he had been invited, but since it was very rare that an invitation issued, he would try to get around his own polite rules by telephoning, to ask whether they would like him to bring the paper. Sometimes he got the paper early, before there was any sign of activity in the downstairs of the pool house. John was asleep, and one could suppose Charlotte as well, in John's bed. Then that pretext was unavailable, and he would watch miserably as Charlotte took the copy of the Times he had bought for them from the kitchen table, carried it across the lawn, and disappeared behind the forbidding door of the other house. Schmidt couldn't deny that the pool house turned out to be a blessing during Mary's illness. It had let Charlotte and John continue a relatively carefree sort of life alongside theirs, without calling attention to the disparity, and without unduly tiring Mary or forcing John to come face to face with the indignities, at first small, and then so shattering, of Mary's struggle.